thanks for coming back to the SBP podcast, Mobile Filmmaking. I'm your host, Susie Botello, and you are listening to episode 188. Hey everyone, I've got a wonderful, most incredible guest. He is in Indianapolis, and I would like to introduce you to Jack Lugar. Jack, how are you?
Hey, Susie, I'm great. I'm so happy to be here.
I am so glad to finally be able to speak with you again. Jack, I met you back in July 2018. So without counting back, but I will anyways, it's been 6 years.
It's been 6 years. That's crazy. Time flies.
Yes. And I met you. It was a really exciting, fun time for me and also for Heartland Film. It was during the inaugural Indy Shorts Film Festival in Indianapolis that I met you. Remember that?
I do remember that. Yeah, because I was leading a session on screenwriting, I believe, and you were doing a session on showing everybody how to use all these great tools that we carry around in our pockets and how to enhance them a little bit and make films with the tools you have. I remember sitting through that session being inspired.
I was impressed by the number of people that were there, and especially people like you. You have quite a background. Why don't we start this by you sharing a little bit about that background? You've got, the first thing that really jumps out at me is that you've got over 10 years in LA as a television writer and producer. So start with that and then just kind of move forward a little bit.
Yeah, I'm originally from Indiana, and so I moved out to Los Angeles in 1994. I waited till right after the Northridge earthquake and moved out to LA that experience really came about as I moved out there. My wife and I did, because I had worked on a feature film that was shot in Indiana. It was about 3 years prior to that, while I was in college, and I met a lot of people. And so when I said, "Okay, I'm ready to make the LA move," moved out there and just started calling everybody that I worked on that film with that had come out from LA to work on it. And it took a little time, but landed a job at Tchaikovsky English Entertainment through the first assistant director on that film. He was now a sitcom writer at Tchaikovsky English, which is Diane English's company. And she is the creator of Murphy Brown.
Nice.
And the show they were doing at the time when I got there was Love and War. So I got to work on that and just kind of started at the bottom. I actually came out there with my undergraduate and graduate degree in film producing, and my glorious job was as a production assistant, a PA.
You may say that's at the bottom, but for some people that's a dream.
Well, and it was for me. I thought I was living the high life. Came out there and was on the CBS Studio Center lot in Studio City. Shows were being shot there, such as Seinfeld, Roseanne, Dave, Grace Under Fire. So it was really a hotbed for sitcom shows, and so that was it was a thrill of a lifetime, because you'd be walking through this on the studio lot, and there was Jerry Seinfeld walking by or someone like that. So got the chance to just get my foot in the door, copying scripts, delivering lunches, going to Starbucks for everybody, all that glamorous stuff, getting cars washed and so forth. But it just gave me a direct access to all the writers on that show. And so that was my desire, to be a sitcom writer and producer. And so it gave me the chance. I was becoming friends with those writers and handing them my scripts and saying, "Can you take a read through this and tell me what I need to work on?" And so it was a great opportunity for me just to have access to professionals who were really doing it. And
that's how you do it. That's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's a crazy story how we made it out to LA, but we just hopped in a U-Haul and kind of made it happen. And took a big risk, took the leap, but called everybody we knew, everybody we didn't know, but knew somebody that knew them or something of that sort. And that's how that opportunity came about. and just kind of kept growing through it. I worked with Louis Anderson, the comedian. He passed away a couple years ago now, but he was doing a show called Life with Louis, which was an animated series on Fox Kids, and I used that to write more scripts and worked with Louis on writing and developing shows, and just kind of kept that process of constantly creating, pushing my own work, working with others, and broke through officially when I got accepted into the Warner Brothers Comedy Workshop. So,
wow. And now, what was that about? What was the workshop experience about?
Yeah, so Warner Brothers, and I think they still do something similar. It's changed a little bit, but during that era, they did a comedy workshop and a drama workshop, and so I applied for the comedy workshop, which was sitcom writing. And you submitted a spec script, so a script from a current show. And I did an Everybody Loves Raymond script. I submitted that, and I was kind of like, oh, I don't know if that's any good. And my wife said, you're submitting it. And I'm like, I don't know. And she's like, no, you're submitting it. And I was like, okay. So I submitted my script, and lo and behold, got a call a few weeks later saying I was accepted in. And so I was one of 12 writers accepted into that program out of about 500 plus scripts that were submitted.
Wow. Congratulations.
So that was just a foot in the door. And then there was an 8-week session where we started workshopping another script with the other people in the program and some mentors. And based on that, it actually got my foot into the door of being a writer on Wanda at Large, which was Wanda Sykes' original sitcom on Fox back in the actually early 2000s. So
wow. So now after getting your foot in the door a few times, you were rolling.
Yeah, I was rolling, and it is a roller coaster. Because what happened actually at that point is I worked on a few other projects, some other pilots after I finished that run, and that year, I think Warner Brothers had one sitcom picked up. It was early 2000s, and reality shows were taking off. Yeah. And so it was a part in my life where I was like, wow, what am I going to do now? So I pitched a lot of reality shows to see if I could get my foot in that door, and eventually it was kind of one of those things where I was like, I think I'm done with this pattern.
Yes.
And maybe it was midlife crisis also, but just decided, my wife and I talked about it, and we decided we had 2 young kids. One was getting ready to start first grade, and it was time to make a change. And so we made a change and moved back to Indiana. And honestly, at that time, Susie, I thought I was done with the business. I said, okay, I'm done. Wow. And what happened for me is, I think of it as a miracle in my life, in a sense that self-publishing became a reality, right? So that I was able to take my creative skills, my writing skills, and I started writing novels and books, other books, and then started adjunct teaching. And when I thought I was totally out of the business, now I'm the cinema and media arts professor at Anderson University here in Indiana, and I run the film program, and I executive produce all our student projects and write some projects with my students, and just really get to exercise all those tools while also mentoring up and coming filmmakers. So it's kind of a dream come true that I didn't know I had that dream, actually. So
yeah,
amazing.
I get to see, we follow each other, and I get to see some of those productions that you work on with the students. They're pretty high quality stuff.
Well, sometimes we expect more out of college students than we probably should. But at the same time, this is where they learn. They're cutting their teeth, right? The ideas they have, the challenges we'll put out for them and that they take on, it's pretty impressive. It's really fun to see them kind of, and their eyes light up when they see it on the big screen come to reality. That's a great moment.
I remember when I was in college and you were talking about screenwriting, and we were asked to blend 2 different shows together and write a screenplay. And if it was good enough, our instructor would help us submit it to some screen contest for television or something that was going on at the time. And yeah. I wish I had all the details of that, but not that I would want to share them here now. But we picked, it was a group of 3 people, And one of them was it was X-Files and what was that one? The Tool Time show that was within the show.
Yeah, Home Improvement. Oh,
yes.
So Tool Time was in Home Improvement. Yeah,
exactly. So we selected that, and we wrote the instructor. I mean, we literally couldn't get together enough because we were all busy. But we finally, one night, we sat in my apartment, did not realize that the balcony door was wide open, and we were just pitching. It was the funnest, most exciting writing exercise that I ever did in my entire life, because and it was what prompted me to think I want to be a writer to write commercials for television.
Yeah.
Because it was just a lot of, ideas going brainstorming, and the guy took it upon himself to take all the notes. Mm-hmm. And then we finished the screenplay. And when we brought it back to the instructor and he gave it back, he says, "This one is definitely getting submitted. I was reading through this and I was envisioning this whole scenario." And he was laughing his head off. It turned out to be hilarious. And I wish I still had it with me, even just a printed copy. But you were just talking about that. And so I was thinking, and I was wondering, with your students, do you guys get to submit some of their projects into competitions and national competitions or anything?
We do. We're still gearing up even more so to do more of that, and I've got a pretty high standard that I want my students to achieve. But yes, we are constantly keeping an eye out. Since we're located in Indiana, we do focus on some of the local festivals, or I say local, they're regional to Indiana, specifically for some of their films. But so it just depends. It depends whether they meet a certain standard. They actually, for the past 2 years, we've had our student films in the Indy Shorts, which is the local Indianapolis Short Film Festival, and others around here.
It's like 6 years old now, right? So
yeah, yes, it's not new anymore. So yeah, we do that, and same with screenplays. Actually, this fall is our screenwriting class coming up. We do that every other year. And so I'm eager to see some of these students and the work they're going to create, because that's one of the things that when I came in there, we were revamping the program. And so it's taken a little time to kind of build up to have a certain level of expectation of what our students here are doing at our university. Obviously, we're not one of the elite film schools like an NYU or a USC or UCLA or something of that sort. But at the same time, as I tell my students, we teach out of the same books. We use the same cameras. All the tools are the same. We just have to have the right mindset, the right attitude about it. And that's what we're really building, is a culture of what filmmakers need to be, and the mindset, the hard work that goes into it. And as they're learning that, we're seeing our work just really improve and skyrocket.
Yeah, I know one of the things that has been happening for the last few years as well is, budget cuts to a lot of the secondary schools and universities and colleges and things like that. But from what I've seen, you guys seem to be doing well in that, in the funding for the department with gear and the program, right?
Yeah, one of the things that I've really tried to focus on since I came in there is having the proper tools. And so, one of the things that we do with our freshmen, we have a video concepts class. And so our first semester, we get them right into using our camera gear. Because other schools will wait a year or two, and I'm like, why are we waiting? This is why we're going to film school, is to get our hands on these things. And so, right out of the gate, we do stuff with our smartphones, and we have a lot of tools to help enhance, such as gimbals and using the lighting and so forth, still to really enhance that tool, which is amazing already. But then on top of that, we have, more traditional video cams, as well as mirrorless cameras, as well as Sony cinematic cameras. And then we have, we're actually in Indiana, the only school that I'm aware of here in Indiana that has an ARRI Alexa Mini LF. So we have the top tier cinema camera at our access. And usually it's our juniors and seniors who are using that camera. They work their way up to it. Because look, the
Yes,
the camera.
I understand.
Yeah, the camera is great, and that's $100,000 camera right there. But the fact of the matter is, if you don't understand lighting and just getting the proper settings with f-stops and shutter speeds and all of those things, and that's the great thing is you can learn that on your iPhone. I mean, I saw you post the other day, which I was happy to see because it was for Android. But Blackmagic, right, offers an app now for iPhone and Android to learn their settings. We have Blackmagic cameras on campus too, and our students love those because their menu settings are so much more easy to use than a lot of other cameras,
and they're more portable too.
Yeah, and we rig it out and we've got a good set of prime lenses, as well as some like to use the zoom because it's easier and more portable. But right, all those tools. Right, you can have all the greatest tools out there, and you still need to know the basics of how to use the camera, how to set up proper composition, and do your proper lighting, and that's what our smartphones. If you do all that well, right. Steven Soderbergh will attest and show you that you can do major motion pictures with an iPhone.
Did you get to watch High Flying Bird by Steven Soderbergh?
I did. I've watched that one, and I haven't seen Unsafe all the way through. I've only seen parts of it, but High Flying Bird, which is it's a Netflix film, so I think it's still accessible on Netflix.
What did you think of it, cinematography wise, and with all your expertise?
You know what? I saw it on TV, right? So it's not playing on a big screen, but obviously, even with those cameras, he's got other lighting tools and so forth. But I loved the scene. I think it's like one of the first scenes in there where the agent is talking to the basketball player in a fancy restaurant. Yes. And they could literally set the two cameras back to back almost, I guess, and shoot that scene, of each of them talking without interrupting the flow of the acting, which I thought was so cool. The other thing I remember him talking about was that he would call David Fincher afterwards. They were done shooting for the day, and it was like 2:00 in the afternoon because they didn't have major camera gear to deal with.
To unload,
he would call him at 2 or 3 and say, "Okay, we're done shooting for the day." And Fincher was in the, they were like, "Yeah, we'll be done in 8 hours still or whatever." So, so and that's the thing, right? We shot a feature 2 years ago, and we're getting ready to release it now, but. We end up shooting on the Ari, and that added a couple hours of work every day just to manage a camera like that. So you have to be real dedicated, and obviously, when you have major motion pictures, they have 20, 30, 40, 50 people on set running around and caring for all these different things. But when you get, we were doing it with 6 or 7 people, the smaller gear would have been much more manageable in some senses for us in that aspect. And yeah. And quality wise, the average movie watcher is not going to probably notice as many differences as, of course, high-end cinematographers, they might know, but
of course,
but the average person's not going to tell the difference.
Yeah, I've had people say that to me before. They're like, I wouldn't have known that this was shot with a phone or whatever it was shot with unless I was really closely paying attention. Right. And those are the people we really do. I mean, if we made films just for filmmakers, I mean, we would be a nervous wreck, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's really interesting. One of the things that helps also is the log capture, which back when you and I met, well, I think a little after that, Filmic Pro, that app had that feature whether or not you had that feature with the iPhone. And so you were able to capture, footage with log format. Yeah. Now the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max came out with that as part of their native camera. And so when Blackmagic came out and said, literally the next day, they announced they had that app free, it kind of hurt Filmic Pro, who had just, they were bought by another company, Bending Spoons, and became overly expensive for people starting out to use as a subscription service. And one of the things that Blackmagic did was, it was, okay, here's a free camera with all the expertise that, Blackmagic Design has with all, Da Vinci and Resolve and their Blackmagic cameras and all of that. And one of the things I ran into the other night was that they made an announcement that they're working on a camera for Vision Pro from Apple, the virtual reality goggles.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yep.
So they're working with Apple to create a camera, a Blackmagic camera, that will be able to produce content for that, films.
Right. Yeah, that's that. I mean, that kind of scares me because I get motion sickness. So I'm not sure how I'll handle that. I'm getting too old, I guess. But yeah.
No, not really. I just think a lot of people, I think there's a difference between handling a smartphone and taking that with you wherever you go, and then, strapping something on your face and, walking around in town with that thing.
Right.
Big difference.
It's pretty crazy. I mean, I'll tell you what, the places where we've come from to where we are today. But and everybody, it kind of brings to mind the AI stuff that people get concerned about. And
yes,
I maybe I should be concerned, but I'm not, because the human mind creates, so much better stuff right now, and the tools we have, if we truly want to be creative, there's always a difference between what people create as opposed to what machines create. So
yeah, and I think Blackmagic and all those technology companies, Canon, they're creating tools for Final Cut Pro, any of those. They're creating tools that we can use to create things as humans.
Right.
They're giving us tools to create and to tell stories is one thing, in my opinion, but just to concentrate fully on the cameras and the AI technology on their own is a little bit, you're cheating yourself in a way, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, the thing from a writer's standpoint, I actually, and from a teacher's standpoint, with AI specifically, the things that I see happening, I love to use the tool as a great launching kind of diving board. It gives me that spring to sometimes get started on something that I'm kind of stuck on. But the creating part is still my job, right? And so I'll have students in the class say, okay, let's use AI to help narrow topics down, or to create the basics, find your main points. Now it's found your main points. Now you do the research and pull that in, right? And the same as I was trying to help students out just to create a short, simple script that they could shoot for a class project. Actually, one of the projects we do is we create a script, and 3 different teams shoot the same script.
Yes.
So that they come back to the class with basically the same movie, but obviously it's a different movie because each team shoots it, directs it differently, and so forth. But
perspective.
But my colleague who said, "Hey, can you write a script for me?" I was like, "Oh yeah, I'll get to that, right?" And then he's like, "Can you get that script to me tomorrow?" This was after I kept putting him off. I was like, "Yeah," and it was just a short script. It wasn't supposed to be anything long, but I literally knew the idea I wanted. And I knew how I wanted it to end, but I couldn't. It was like just getting the motivation. Yes. And so I asked. I think it was ChatGPT at that time. Right. I just said, I asked it to write the script. It literally didn't write a script. It wrote about a half a page. But I read the first 3 lines, and it got me unstuck. I was like, now I know where to go with this, right? And it was that little motivation that I needed to kind of to jumpstart, right? So it was what I was going to say, jumper cables.
It's right? The Gemini Cricket.
There you go. Yeah. Give me that little boost. So I that's the thing, right? Is the tools are out there to help us create better things, and be inspired and so forth. And so cameras are that way. Our editing tools are that way. The skill of knowing how to edit it all goes back to, can you tell a good story, right? And so that's why I'm always going back to, let's tell good stories. And so whatever the tool is, right? To me, I'm like, there's no need to pick up a camera until you have a story to tell. There's no need to, so all these things start back at the beginning, which is why I love to write. I love to create those stories out of whole cloth and go from there. So quite honestly, doing graphics as a graphics designer, and I would get,
like teenagers and stuff. I want to learn how to use Photoshop. And I'm like, you can't just dive in there, and you have to have some sort of a vision or a concept or an idea what you want to create. And then you start digging around and pulling things together and creating things. But it's really hard for people to understand that when they just want to learn how to use a tool.
Right.
It's like, what do you do with a hammer, and a nail, unless you want to? I should be talking to you. I know you're a carpenter in a way too.
That's one of the things we work on as a university is we're really thinking about critical thinking. Our critical thinking skills. And so, yes, we're teaching it in the confines of film and television. My colleagues in graphic design, we have a visual communication major, which is tantamount to graphic design, but it's so much more than that, right? Because it's not just here's how you use Photoshop and here's how you use Adobe Illustrator and here's how you use Lightroom. It's what are you communicating? And then here's the tools, what tool is best to communicate that with, and so forth, right? So it's really about critically thinking about what problem are we solving. Same with our stories that we tell. What are the stories that we're telling? Okay, now how are we going to make that happen, right? How are we going to tell it? Are we telling the story through comedy or through drama? A variety of different things like that. And so if we learn how to critically think, we can process that. And then you've see people that they get access to Photoshop or even Canva now, right? And because they have access to 30 different fonts, they use them all, right? And what we understand is that certain ones go with certain, messages, and we understand that, but it's a learned skill. I mean, it's an art and talent, but it's also a learned skill because we have so many tools. That doesn't mean we use them properly yet. So that's what we're working on.
Yeah, and I think at the foundation of all these things that we're talking about is the artist.
Mm-hmm.
That can sometimes get lost in the tools, in the tool bag, and all these, especially now where we have so many options. Going back to the smartphones, from the Ari to the Blackmagic camera to the Red Cam to the, going back, and even in the smartphone lineup, right? I was just talking about the 15, and now the 16th iPhone is coming out. And, you can go back and make, Sean Baker shot Tangerine with a 5S that played at Sundance on a large screen. Yep. And made a big name for himself. And then Magnolia Pictures picked up that show. They did a theater run for it in the U.S. It's for all I know, it's still on Netflix. It's been on Netflix since like 2015 or something as well. And, so someone saying, if you guys who are listening, you're thinking, well, what's the best camera? Change that into what story do I want to tell? And then just grab what you have available to you. Yeah. And I mean, I'm saying don't overthink it on one hand, but really take advantage of the tools to create your best film that you can with all those things, and go ahead and challenge yourself to go even further than that, right?
Yeah. Well, the best camera to use is the camera you have access to.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I preach to, we do a film camp for high schoolers, and of course they come and they have access to a variety of different cinema style cameras and mirrorless cameras when they're with us for the week. But I say, what do you do when you go home? You probably don't have access to these types of cameras. What do you have access to? And then I point out they've all got a 4K camera in their pocket that they have a tool that is better than anything I grew up with and had access to in college. And so, the best camera is that one that you have. And this was, it's probably 10 to 12 years ago, but my daughter was interested in doing film and I was adjuncting, but I wasn't really deeply involved in doing stuff for the time being. And she wanted to do the 48-hour film project.
Oh, yes.
Right. So I was like, oh, we just don't have a camera. And my wife said, yes, you do. And I was like, okay, yes, you're right. And we shot it on her iPhone. I mean, we got Filmic Pro on there as the app. I think it was a $5 app at the time. and we shot, a film. We pulled the tools we had together and we made it work. And I think at the time you could get a 30-day trial of Premiere Pro and, things like that. So we did it as cheap as possible, and we made a coherent film. We shot it in 48 hours and planned and shot it in 48 hours. So it had some needs, right? But the whole thing that really kind of, for me, it really solidified is quit making excuses.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm at now with every student I talk to is there's no need for excuses. We have every opportunity to do what you want to do. And then I say, think creatively. One of the things I preach to my students is limitations force creativity. I'll say that to them a lot. Mm-hmm. And so like we'll give them prompts, or challenges, but we all in a micro budget film world, whether that's, whatever camera you're shooting on, is you are hampered by some of the aspects of what do you have at your access, right? And so every low budget indie filmmaker, dating back to the Robert Rodriguez's and Ed Burns and so forth, was always about, what do we have access to? And you write your script around those things, right? And so I'm constantly getting my students to, I said, fine, write your sci-fi script and your spaceships and so forth, but we can't shoot that here. We don't have spaceships and
you have to get really creative to kind of do a mock of any of those things.
Yeah.
And what because I understand what you're saying 100%. Yeah. I used to say that a lot, use if Stephen Peterson, he is a screenwriter, I should say, and he's got a few films, and he wrote a film, and I had him on the podcast. He was in our film festival, and he made his own feature film. And this is a guy that's made films with Hollywood actors and big budget films, and he had a screenplay that he wanted to tell, that story that's in your pocket, basically, right? That no one else is going to fund. But with the smartphone, he actually used an Android phone, and had him on the podcast, and he said this one thing. He said, if you write a screenplay to shoot it on a phone, it's gonna get made.
Correct.
Yes,
correct.
Because of the limitations. And sometimes I tell people, I'm like, because you can get stumped in screenwriting. If you're running with the flow of your story, and yes, you have an airplane crash or whatever, just go ahead and add it. That's what I say. Just keep going, keep the flow going, keep the momentum going. Complete your script. You can always revise it later. Maybe you can just add the audio of the thing and have a flash of light coming in through a window, and you don't have to show an airplane crashing, but just keep the flow, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of filmmaking, isn't it? That we've gotten so much, so often in these days of thinking everything has to be on screen.
Yes.
And some of the beauty of filmmaking is that you don't have to show it. Instead, the reaction might be what you focus on instead. Yeah, and then sound effects can create what you need, right? And so I think that's we focus too much on our limitations, and so that's I preach that constantly. We do a thing at school. It plays off of NaNoWriMo, which is the National Novel Writing Month in November. We do at Anderson, we do Storytelling Month in February. And we just set a goal of 500 words a day. But what I'm trying to teach our students, one is a habit of writing and daily doing it, but also that look, if you just sit down and you just say, I'm going to write, and not worry about what you're going to write, that just focus on just writing, you can crank out the 500 words, and usually it's a lot more than that, a lot of times really fast. And I also preach that editing is different than writing. And so we write first and then edit later. So when I stopped editing while I was writing, I was able to finish projects. So I wrote a lot of scripts that got halfway done, and because I was always going back and editing and fixing, I never got done with a lot of them. And so when I started just saying, you know what, I'm going to keep writing and go through to the end, and once I'm done, then I will edit, because it's a totally different skill set, and editing stops the flow of creative writing. Once I separated those two, I have 6 novels. I have 3 kids novels and 3 young adult novels that, I can sit down in 2 months, 3 months max and write out the full novel. And then I worry about getting it fixed and making it ready for public consumption.
Yeah. And most people think about writers, they picture Johnny Depp with his glasses on out in a cabin somewhere, being terrorized.
Yeah, exactly.
But luckily, that's not how it works. But yeah, it's definitely about the momentum and letting the flow. And sometimes your fingers just can't go fast enough because your mind is just, it's, like for me, I love to write. I enjoyed writing a lot when I was a kid. And I literally spent one summer. It's funny you were talking about that nano thing. We were spending the summer in Spain. And while my mom went to the beach, with my sister and everybody, I would stay home and write. And I was writing this by hand on a notebook. And I was writing this story. It was like a horror type story. And every day throughout that summer that we spent there, I think it ended up being almost 3 months, I wrote the entire thing. Mm-hmm. But I committed myself to doing it. It's like an hour or 2 a day.
Yeah.
And I just wrote it. And it was all by hand, so it's not like I could go back and edit anything. And when I got back home, this is a story I don't think I've ever shared on the podcast, guys. Mm-hmm. Jack, I wrote this whole thing. I had it, and I went back home, and my best friend had a friend come in from some other state, and she started reading this thing overnight. I had just met her, and she was leaving the next day. And she was supposed to leave that, read it overnight, finish it, and then she was supposed to leave it with my friend.
Yeah.
She stole it.
Oh, no.
She took it. She said... my friend said that she didn't realize she was stealing it, but she said, "Oh, I didn't finish it, but I really got into it."
Yeah.
And next thing she knew, she took off and went off in her airplane to wherever she went, and I never saw it again. And it was such a terrible experience for me as far as like never hand your only copy.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like that's the start of another movie premise right there that you could launch with, right?
but my point, I think, in sharing this, just because the story just came up in my head when you were, saying this, is basically that it must have been good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
If it's captivating enough, people will read it. And for anyone that's out there writing, that means people will buy them from you. And what an easy thing to do. I mean, now we have the technology, right? To just do it all on the screen and edit and things like that. But back then I was just a teenager with a notebook and a pen.
Right. Of course, it still points to back up your work, right?
Right. Somehow.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing is that I had a student post on Facebook. She was asking for advice on how to write it. She was like, I've got this story that I want to write, but it feels so much bigger than me. What do I need to do? And of course, my blunt response was button seat, one word at a time. We stop ourselves from writing because how do I do this? Well, it doesn't matter how you do it. Just with writing, that's the beauty of it. Just start writing, right? You not everything's going to be gold, and you're going to edit later, and some of it's going to be, professional authors of major novels have written entire novels and trashed it and started over. I can't imagine doing that, wow. But that that's the thing is that they don't nothing about the words they're writing are sacred. And they understand that it's the process.
Yes.
Somerset. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Smoggin or something. He says, "I only write when I'm inspired, and fortunately, I'm inspired at 9:00 every morning."
Aww.
Right, and so that's the key is that I find that if I truly get rid of all my distractions, sit down and write, I write and start creating, and that's the start of it. And big things come out of small beginnings. And that's, like I did that 3 years ago, just sat down. I had a movie idea and just started writing. I hadn't written a full screenplay in a few years because I'd been writing novels and shorter screenplays. But that one came to me and did the process. And next thing I know, I was setting a year out date to start production on it. And, but from that small step of just putting a few words on the page and playing with that idea became an actual feature film. So it happens, if you put your diligence and stay focused, it happens.
When it comes to short filmmaking, especially with the ease of this tool of the smartphone, it can be very easy to just think, I just need a shot list, basically. Mm-hmm. I just need a guideline, an outline of some sort, but it's a short film. I know what I'm going to do. You usually, for something like that, you've got maybe just one person, is your whole crew, 2 people, 3 people, whatever it is. But I'm trying to push for everybody, and more people are consciously doing it now, because I feel like when you have that screenplay, now you've got something instead of, you and I, you've been in LA, there's a lot of, everybody's a producer.
Yep.
And they've got nothing other than just saying, I'm a producer. But, everybody's got the story. I'm going to make a movie. I'm making a movie. It's like, okay, show me the movie.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
That's your selling product right there. If you want to call it a product, that's your idea. Right. It's something tangible that people can read and say, you know what, this is good. I want to be a part of that. Right.
Yeah. Oh, I had so many friends and acquaintances that would always talk about their project that was they would even say, oh yeah, it's been greenlit. It's happening now. We're scheduling, right? And those movies have still never been made. Which is, why I preach to my students, don't wait around for somebody else to give you permission. You do it, right? And that's what's great about this economy that we're in these days, is that we don't have the gatekeepers telling us we can't make our movie, or we can't write our book. We can't make our music. No, we have all the tools now, right? Yep. Now it's hard work always still finding the audience in some senses, but the great thing is, your film festival, the mobile film festival being available, you can find an audience, and that's what the beauty is. And so this culture that we have, where we can, the gatekeepers are out of our way, in a sense. We can make our movie. We can get it out to an audience. We can, spread it around, and there are actually, buyers for shorts and features, right? That are independently made. And are they get rich opportunities? Probably not. But if what you want to do is make movies, nothing's stopping you anymore. Nothing is stopping you.
There's a very powerful thing that I like to kind of preach, which is the community part of what is happening today. Mm-hmm. So you have an entire community online of people that you meet when in our film festival. There are people that meet each other, and then they meet each other in person, or they meet each other through the online or the movies that we're presenting at the film festival, and the social media following and all these things. The thing is that you have a support system when you have the community, and independent filmmakers can really, really help each other out in the distribution part. Because if you think about what social media is, it's a way to distribute who you are, right? And what you do. And you can create a film, and you may not need to go look for Paramount Pictures or Netflix to distribute your film. You can self-distribute to Amazon, for example, and Tubi and all those other platforms. And then you can start building your audience and engaging with them. And by supporting each other, I have this saying where it's like, you're not going to find a single person probably to just hand you $1,000, but you can find 1,000 people to each give you $1.
No, this is true. This is true.
Jack,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about your experience as a judge at the film festival with some of the films that you watched. Well, I know that you watched a number of the films because you were judging them, obviously.
Yeah.
I kind of twisted your arm and said, don't forget to watch these films.
Oh, I'd love to. Loved it.
Yes.
Yeah.
What was your takeaway from the quality and, the audio and the video, the storytelling and all those things from the films that you got to see?
Wow, the ones that we looked at this year, really a variety of different talents and storytelling styles and so forth. Obviously, between documentary and narrative, and how they approach the use of lighting. I thought there were some that had just captivating images, and you're like, oh, that was captured on a smartphone, and just that, and then. Use of B-roll, and I was watching one of the shots. I'm like, where did they set that camera to get that shot? I think it was on a subway or a train or a bus or something like that. It was an outside shot, and I was like, they must have been reaching around the window or something. But it's like just that creativity to create unique shots. And of course, that's the great thing about a smartphone, is that you can just reach outside with it in your hand while you're driving along and get that shot, where with a bigger camera you need a whole car rig or
with
something.
With an RE or something, you mean?
Yeah. So so using that tool to be to truly be mobile and innovative is always fun to see. But then it's also as the film that was my favorite. One was a narrative film, and I'm partial to narrative filmmaking because I truly believe it's harder than documentary filmmaking. That's hopefully not offensive to documentary filmmakers. It's just,
I love documentaries, but I'm not going to be offended by that at all because I love narrative filmmaking. It's very artful.
Yeah, but I always say, look, and so that's the challenge, because with narrative filmmaking, you not only have to have all the camera angles and all those aspects, but you actually have to have actors
yes.
who can act. And that's where it really becomes challenging on a smaller level. I have a whole, just a greater appreciation all the time for good Hollywood actors, because, when you're not dealing with people that understand how to act in front of a camera, because most people that work in smaller communities do a lot more stage work, and it's a different style, and so there's so many different aspects, but really capturing that story from a narrative standpoint. I just love that the nothing about it when you're watching it goes, this is made on a smartphone. You just watch it and you go, this is a great story, and how they captured it, because I know I'm judging for the mobile film festival that it is a smartphone.
Yeah.
Otherwise I wouldn't think twice about it. And that's what's great about it, is that the quality of content is really up there.
That happens to me sometimes, where I'm watching films, especially now that they're a little longer, than the 5-minute films. But I forget that I'm watching a film shot from submitted to the festival.
Right.
So it could be anything. Because I become engulfed, and I'm just, I'm very captivated by them. And I know that you didn't get to watch the feature films. Hopefully this next year, you'll be able to make it down to San Diego. But the feature films are very captivating, and you completely forget that they're shot with a phone.
Yeah.
You just do, especially in the world of film festivals and indie filmmaking, not to compare it to Hollywood films or anything like that, just for what they are, good stories told by an independent filmmaker, not with a big budget or anything like that. And the stories sometimes really, they're very solid. I know that's a very simplified term, but they really hold substance to the story that they're trying to tell. And you're right about the acting, because one of the things in the film festival and a lot of the feature filmmakers and stuff that I've noticed is the actors have a lot of theater experience. And because this is a smart camera, a smart camera,
Yeah.
a smartphone camera, it's very mobile and very non-intrusive.
Yeah.
They can play into that in a way that they can't with a larger camera.
Right. Yeah. They see that big camera in front of them. They get a little bit performy, kind of stagey in a sense. Something that's less obtrusive could be more handy that way and keep their performances on a lower, a pulled back level that you need. So, yeah, it's I think that the great thing about, especially with the smartphone production too, is that it's a lower risk venture as you're especially learning to be a filmmaker. For new filmmakers, right? They're not risking a lot of capital in that aspect. I think about the Duplass brothers talking about their first film. It was called Vince Del Rio. I don't think it ever got finished. I think it got finished, but it never went anywhere. And they spent $65,000 of their own money. This was their first film they directed, and they said it was the smoothest set we've ever had. Everybody got along, everybody was happy, et cetera, et cetera. And then they got to editing and edited it, and they were like, well, it just didn't feel right. And they showed it to friends, and they tried again. And I think they finally just said, okay, we can't do anything with it, right? And that was their first film, and about sunk them in the sense that they could never do it again because they'd spent so much on the first film that they did. Instead of learning their technique and where they excelled at, which when they made Puffy Chair, that helped them understand, hey, let's focus on story, not on making a big movie production. We're not trying to be Hollywood. And so that's the great thing about smartphone filmmaking is that it allows you to make mistakes, right? It's a lot easier to go back out and reshoot something too if you need to. All those kind of things. It's great.
Yeah, and it's your learning curve, really. You're getting your experience because, like you were saying before about filmmaking, that a lot of the techniques in filmmaking are the same no matter what you're shooting with.
Right. They are, right? And that's the great thing about the apps with Filmic and Blackmagic is they allow you to practice with f-stops and you're not maybe changing out prime lenses, but you're really working with using the camera in a cinematic camera style, using settings and so forth like that.
I have a curious question that I want to ask. When I was in college in my film classes and stuff, one of the things was like when you're building the teams and everybody to work on your films and your projects. Everybody wants to be the director and everybody wants to be the cinematographer. Nobody wants to do the other parts, but they're so necessary.
Yeah.
Do you guys find that in your school with the students as well?
We've been pretty fortunate though that the number of people that have come in and said I want to really direct hasn't been as many as I would have expected prior to coming. Oh. I have a lot that want to edit instead. But yeah, the good thing is we're a small enough school that we can divvy up projects like that, so that if somebody's like, well, I wanted to direct, I'm like, you're not directing this, but you do have an opportunity to direct this one. Plus, one of the things that we do is I'm always encouraging them, bring a script that you want to shoot on your own, and we'll support you. We've got the tools. The equipment is at your access for free. I mean, they've paid for school. So it's not like we're going to say, if you want to do a project that's not part of one of our class projects or not one of our scheduled projects, you are welcome to do that with our equipment. Put together a good script. Let me help you make it a better script if possible. Let's get some good feedback on it. And so if you really want to direct, then you'll get your opportunity. And so we've never had anybody leave the school that said, I really want to direct and never got a chance to. They all get to. And the ones who are motivated will do more projects outside of class, and they're definitely directing a lot. So
that's incredible. That's incredible that you do that, though, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, it's because that was my thing when I went to film school. I'm going to direct. I found I was a better writer than director, but we teach all the skills because we want our students to, even if they say, I don't want to direct, I just want to edit. Well, as an editor, you better know how to direct so that you're getting the right material from your director. And if you're not, you can talk to them about what you need. I
had to be in front of a camera for someone that I owed a favor to. and being part of a crew, I was always a script supervisor. I kind of got stuck in that position, and then I was a production coordinator, AKA firefighter or something, just putting out fires all
Yep.
day. But, I enjoyed every part that I ever did in video production and in the film process, the filmmaking process. But I was involved with Mickey Harrison here in San Diego, and she's now 88 years old this March. And she made a few films with iPhones as well. But when I met her, we were making films every weekend, and her production company, her film production company, was helping. The goal was that she would help students, and the universities would send students. A lot of them came from UCSD and San Diego State and things like that. And they had a film project. They were students like yours, and they had a project of their own that they wanted to make. Some of them, it was even a final project for school. And she would look at their screenplays, and she would help them develop the screenplay in a shootable format. This is too long. This is too much, things like that. And then we would all team up, and you had professionals. I remember one guy worked on Family Ties and a lot of NBC shows and Little House on the Prairie when he was, his first experience doing that. He did audio, sound mixing for those, and a bunch of other people. I mean, I was like stargazing. I was like, oh my God, you worked on these films. I was, a lot younger at the time. And so she did that. She actually helped out these students, and we did very low budget films that she would fund herself. And we kind of volunteered. She sometimes paid some of us under the table, like, shh, don't tell everybody,
right,
or something. But other than that, I mean, it was such a great experience, and I was all for it. I mean, I spent probably 2 years straight every single week, and I would work all week, and then on the weekends I would look forward to doing this because we were helping students with their films, and some of them never went anywhere, or anything like that, but they learned, and they got to network with professionals on the set. So I just want to applaud you for caring and being so passionate with your students as well about this entire industry. Because, you could have stayed in LA or you could have gone back. But instead, you're using all your skills and all your expertise and, and all your talents to help these students fulfill their dreams. Yeah.
No, I appreciate you saying that. It's a lot of fun. I think they keep me young. So I'm in my 50s now, and so they think I'm old, but I tell them I may look old, but I'm still just a kid. And so that's the fun part, is just to keep creating, right? I get to play with my imagination, on a regular basis, and see them come up with great ideas. And I'll read some of theirs and go, darn, I wish I had thought of that. That's great. So it's so much fun. And I was thinking, as you were talking about just these, getting together, working as groups and so forth, I was thinking about the aspect, right, of when you're making smaller projects, with your smartphone and so forth, you really learn to do so many different aspects of filmmaking too. You have a crew of 3 or 4 or 5 people, so everybody's kind of pulling their weight and doing multiple tasks. So you're learning so much more. I didn't learn certain aspects of filmmaking until I moved back to Indiana, because in LA I was writing, producing. I mean, that was really my task. So I wasn't handling cameras, I wasn't doing lights, I wasn't doing editing, right? So all these things, as technology was increasing, I wasn't really dabbling in them at all because I was too busy just writing, right? You become a specialist out in Los Angeles, but when you come back and do indie film, smaller projects,
it's so much more fun. I
carry the C-stands. I do the editing. I help set up lights. All these different things that before, I would just stay in the background away from. So that's the fun part in these group projects, is just that everybody can really get together, and it's quite a bonding experience, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And you can't, as a script supervisor, if you're working in Hollywood, right, you're not allowed to go help the lighting people with, creatively or however with something that they need help on. They're struggling. Time is running out. It's very departmentalized.
Yep.
Because everything is union based and things like that as well. So you're not allowed to. Yep. But in indie filmmaking, that is, oh my God, it's just, I miss it. There's a part of me that really misses it, but at the same time, I learned so much from it. Yeah. And the family building part is fantastic. The people that you meet in school, if any of your students happen to be listening to this, the people that you meet in school isn't always, like when I started school, I was a little lost. I wasn't sure what I was going to be able to do. Right. But the culture and the networking, the people you meet and all those things help you find who you really want to be before you even know it. Yeah. And you can meet people in school that'll help you no matter what you're doing. I always talk about the horizon that's always moving. There are little goals that you reach, and then what, right? But if you set your eyes on the horizon, it's always in front of you. No matter which path you take, you're gonna always stay. That's your guide, right? And you can't really get lost. You can do circles, and you're still, if you're looking at the horizon beyond you, you've got that in mind. And so you'll take these different jobs, and sometimes you'll complain, what does this have to do with what I want to do in the future? I mean, what is this? You could be working at, in a restaurant and meet an actor that wants to make a film or that knows someone in the industry. It's just an amazing prospect. But I always think going to school is one of those places where you find the people that are going to help you get there, realize your future, really, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have some students who kind of try to go it alone or don't connect, but so many of them, I'm always saying, these are your future potential partners. And we see that with a lot of filmmakers, the Daniels who did Swiss Army Man and Everything Everywhere All at Once. Met in film school, and there's a chance you're going to meet that partner that's going to, help you really kind of fill out the needs that you have or your inadequacies or what you lack. They can complement that, and you guys can really build some real potential. And that because filmmaking, as we preach, they're group projects, right? I mean, the dreaded group project in school where two people do all the work and everybody else kind of drags along. In filmmaking, everything's a group project. It's hard to make a film by yourself. I've done it where I set the camera up, go around, act, and then check it and find that it's out of focus. I have to redo it and all that. But it's really hard to do by yourself. Yes. Where you need a team, right? Somebody that can be in front of the camera, multiple people that can be behind the camera, learning to work together as teams, and everybody pulling their weight. It's, when you have that success and human nature doesn't let everything go smoothly, but for the most part, right? Yeah, you get done in the end and you go, wow, we did this, we completed this as a team, and that's really fulfilling. Everybody pulling their weight.
That's the magic right there, Jack. Yeah. It's the fact that it's the ultimate team endeavor, right? Is filmmaking, and it's one of the things. Even for little kids, if they are making films together, they get to see the skills and the talents of one another that they didn't even know were there. Yeah. I really, truly believe it would help with bullying. That quiet little reserved, quiet kid, the strange kid, right? Yeah. And wouldn't you know that they can compose the most wonderful music for your film? Right. That will set your film off in the right direction. That's what we see when we do a high school film camp every summer, and that's what we see with these kids that come from all these different high schools
we've had kids come from Portland, Oregon, and down in Florida up here to Indiana to learn filmmaking skills for a week. But it's all these kids that come from schools where they probably don't really have a tribe, but they get together for this week, and it's their tribe of people who are passionate about movies and talking about film and how they're made and all this stuff. And you see them get together and they come from different walks, but all of a sudden they become kind of a cohesive team in just a couple of days because they have so much in common. That's fun to see as these kids that probably feel a little ostracized in their schools that they're at, where they can come together like that and be a part of a little family.
We need more teachers like you in all the schools that to believe in those things, to believe in the kids in that sense, and believe that filmmaking is, more than, there's math, there's history, social studies, science, but, film kind of brings all of that together. It's a science, it's technology, and it's art and storytelling. Yep. I mean, it's everything. Yep. So
well, and and the other thing, again, we shot a film 2 years ago. It's coming out this fall, and
what is it called?
It's called This Train.
That's
This Train, yeah, and it's and formerly Hellcat. It used to be called Hellcat, but the distributor asked us to change the name for a more conservative audience, so we obliged. I just want people to see the film, right? But one of the great fun aspect for me was that it was a project that all my family participated in. So my wife was my executive producer, and my daughter was my first AD and did continuity for us. My son and his wife were our props masters. Actually, my daughter's husband, we were shooting 2 weeks straight, so he was working full time, but he came out back in the weekends and just helped us, PA, whatever we needed help with. And my youngest son acted in it. So it was just, a family affair between my family and then just a bunch of people from Anderson University and Anderson Connections that were willing to help out with it. And so it's one of those things that as a family, though, that was fun to experience that. Of course, it was kind of me. It was kind of like when you're a kid and you're organizing all the other kids to do something that you want to do. They may not be totally excited about it, but for some reason you're leading the way. I was the big kid and just kind of dragged my whole family and said, "You're helping with this," and they did. So they loved me through it.
I really do believe another thing about that is, and I've learned this through our film festival, that it strengthens the bonds between the family members. Mm-hmm. It's good to have a family, working on a project like this together, where like what I was just saying about, the kids in the schools, and within a family where, your little brother and your older sister, you name it, you may have issues with mom or dad, confidence issues or whatever, but all of a sudden the magic comes out, right? And they see that in you, and they see it can change their perspectives. And you're making something happen together. You're really creating something magical. Yeah. And, how cool would it be that a family would shoot a film on a smartphone and then come to submit it to our film festival, and then they get to watch it, and, we roll out the red carpet for them as well, and they get to watch it together. Guess what, Jack? Somebody did that this year.
I was listening to one of your podcasts with Reka, I believe is her name. Their family project. That's
Shirkley.
It's a great thing. I mean, that's the beauty of it, and I'm sure that with families have their disagreements, so film will bring some of that out, but at the same time, it'll bring you all together too. So. Yeah,
because you want to see that pull through. So, sometimes when you have a disagreement with people and there's nothing gluing you together, there's no purpose, you can kind of drift away, right? Where, okay, but we need to get back to this, though.
Yeah.
And that happens on film sets, too, where, I've been on film sets where the cinematographer and the director, they feel very strongly about each other's roles. They both share a vision, a different aspect of that vision. Right. And, they walk off together. Meanwhile, everybody in the crew, we're just kind of standing there in the dark, just like, okay, so what's going to happen here?
Right.
The mosquitoes are attacking us. What are we going to do? And then they come back together. But, you have to, I just love filmmaking, the whole process of it. You were just talking about the two guys that never completed. They spent $65,000, but man, they learned a lot from that experience.
Yeah, the Duplass brothers. I mean, they were able to draw from that. They have a book called Like Brothers. They actually are brothers. But I just actually finished reading it. They're kind of the indie darlings of Hollywood in some senses.
Yeah, I know who they are now. I just couldn't remember their name a second ago. Yeah, because
they were the executive producers on Tangerine, which was the iPhone film shot. But that's one of the things that I just, if I can, all those books by independent film producers, I consume those if I can find them, because there's just such great inspiration to see what they did. I mean, that was the first book I probably did read was Sex, Lies, and Videotape. The book Soderbergh wrote based on the film that he made. This was back in the early 90s, maybe late 80s,
but or something.
Yeah. And that book has stuck with me. I still have it, and I actually reread it a couple of years ago when I was preparing my film, just for motivation, inspiration, to kind of really say, Soderbergh did it, and he did it. Of course, he had a little bit more backing with it, but he was shooting on film and their process, and if he can do it, I can do it. That was kind of it, right? And those are good motivators to say those guys were doing it back in the 90s, and they were having to shoot on film. So all the better for us. We're shooting digitally, and we have all these tools. There's no reason we can't do it. Yes.
Well, Jack, is there now, guys? We're gonna put links to Jack's IMDb and his website, and are you on LinkedIn or Facebook? I mean, I know you're on Facebook.
I'm everywhere. I'm hard not to find. Jack.
Are you on Instagram too?
I am on Instagram. I have an Instagram personal one. I have an author page, and I have one for the film, This Train. So I'm pretty prolific on all the social media sites. But I'll send you links to everything. People can connect with me. Yeah. I'm always glad to talk and see how I can help somebody out, or maybe I'll learn something. I'm always glad to expand my knowledge.
Yeah, we'll do a circle of of exchange. We learn from you, and maybe there's someone out there you can learn from. I know that we're gonna talk to you again in the podcast here. So I know this. I don't want to act like this is goodbye. You'll never hear from Jack again. As you can tell, Jack is very savvy. He's quite an expert. He's got a lot of stories to share that will help you guys understand the filmmaking process. And he's a big believer. I mean, this is a guy that works with $100,000 cameras, guys. And we got him on our show for you. He's a big believer in smartphone filmmaking and helping you realize your dreams. And who knows, maybe you can make that great, wonderful mobile film. And, maybe you can meet Jack in Indianapolis or at our film festival in San Diego.
I hope so.
And maybe he'll help you in your next film project shot with a camera or something. So, Jack, are you ready to say goodbye to our listeners?
Yes, thank you, Susie, for having me on. I appreciate it. This is great. I love talking movies and filmmaking. So anytime, I'd love to come back.